My name is Alice Jordan and I'm 28 years old. I remember the exact moment everything inside me finally snapped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like something breaking that had been cracking for years. I was standing in my mother's kitchen on Thanksgiving, my hands deep in soapy water, scrubbing dishes while laughter echoed from the dining room. 22 people sat at that table, my family, my blood, and yet, not one of them saw me as anything more than the help. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the house, wrapping around everyone like warmth. Except me, I stood there in an old sweater, sleeves rolled up, my reflection staring back from the kitchen window like a ghost. I could hear my cousin Rachel laughing, my brother Daniel telling stories, my mother entertaining guests like she always did, perfect, polished, admired. And then her voice cut through everything, sharp and casual. "Alice, hurry up with those dishes. You know you're basically the maid tonight." The room left, soft at first, then louder. I froze. It wasn't new. That word maid had followed me for years like a shadow I couldn't outrun. Ever since I moved back home after college, struggling to make ends meet, they stopped seeing me as family. I became the one who cleaned, who cooked, who stayed invisible while they lived their picture-perfect lives. My brother was the golden child. My cousins were successful, and I was the one they pitied and used in the same breath. And the worst part, I let them. I dried my hands slowly, my fingers trembling just enough that I had to steady them against the counter. I told myself to ignore it, just like always. Just survive the night, smile if needed, stay quiet. But something felt different this time. Something heavier, like all the years of silence had finally piled up to hide to carry anymore. I could feel it in my chest, tightening, rising, demanding to be heard. When I walked into the dining room, no one noticed at first. They were too busy laughing, eating, clinking glasses like everything was perfect. My mother was at the head of the table, glowing with pride as she entertained guests. She looked at me briefly, then waved her hand dismissively. "Alice, can you bring more gravy and clean the plates while you're at it?" Like I wasn't her daughter, like I was hired help who forgot her place. I didn't move. That's when a few heads turned. My brother raised an eyebrow, confused. My aunt leaned back in her chair, watching me with curiosity. And my mother, her smile faded just a little. "Alice," she said again, her tone sharper this time. "Did you hear me?" The room went quieter, like something was shifting, but no one knew what yet. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. I took a step forward, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. "I heard you," I said, my voice steady but low. It surprised even me. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. A few people exchanged glances. My cousin smirked like she was waiting for a joke. But I wasn't joking. Not anymore. "I've heard you for years," I continued, my eyes locked on my mother's. "Every comment, every made joke, every time you treated me like I didn't belong at this table." The air changed. You could feel it. My mother straightened in her chair, her expression tightening into something controlled, something dangerous. "Alice, this is not the time," she said, forcing a laugh as if trying to brush it off. "We have guests." But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not now. Not when the truth was finally breaking through all the fear I'd buried for so long. "No," I said softly. "This is exactly the time." And that's when 22 people froze. The silence stretched so tight it felt like it might snap in half. No one reached for their food. No one dared to laugh this time. My mother's smile disappeared completely, replaced by that familiar look, controlled, irritated, embarrassed. "Alice," she said again, slower now, like she was speaking to a child who didn't understand boundaries. "Go to the kitchen. We'll talk about this later." But later was where everything always went to die. Later was where my voice had lived for years unheard, dismissed, buried. I shook my head, just slightly, but it felt like defying gravity. My hands weren't trembling anymore. In fact, for the first time in a long time, I felt steady. "No," I said, my voice clearer now, carrying across the table. "We're not doing later again. Not tonight." I could see the discomfort spreading across faces, my aunt shifting in her chair, my cousin looking down at her plate, my brother rubbing the back of his neck like he wanted to disappear. But no one stopped me. No one defended me either. My mother exhaled sharply, placing her fork down with a quiet but deliberate clank. "You're embarrassing yourself," she muttered, her tone low but sharp enough to cut. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you behave." That sentence, I had heard it so many times it used to make me feel small instantly. But this time, it didn't land the same. This time, it sounded hollow, rehearsed, like something she said to keep control, not to speak truth. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated, my voice softer now, but somehow stronger. I took another step closer to the table, feeling every pair of eyes lock onto me. "You mean letting me live here while reminding me every single day that I'm a failure? Turning me into the person who cooks, cleans, and stays out of sight so you can pretend your family is perfect?" My words weren't loud, but they didn't need to be. They landed exactly where they needed to. A quiet murmur moved through the room. I saw it, the shift. People weren't laughing anymore. They weren't even neutral. They were listening, really listening. My cousin Rachel, who had laughed the loudest earlier, suddenly looked uncomfortable. My uncle leaned forward slightly, his brows furrowed like he was piecing something together. And my brother, he wouldn't meet my eyes at all. That hurt more than anything else. "I never said you were a failure," my mother snapped quickly. But there was a crack in her voice now, small, barely noticeable. But it was there. "You're overreacting. It was a joke, a joke." That word again, the shield she always hid behind, the excuse that turned cruelty into something harmless. I let out a quiet breath, shaking my head slowly. "A joke is something everyone laughs at," I said, my voice almost a whisper now. But the room was so silent it echoed. "Tell me, when have I ever laughed?" That question hung in the air like something heavy and undeniable. No one answered. No one could, because they all knew the truth. Even if they had chosen to ignore it, my chest tightened. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. "Do you know what it feels like to sit in a room full of your own family and feel invisible?" I continued, my eyes scanning the table now. "To hear people talk about dreams, careers, success, while you're only called when something needs to be cleaned." My voice wavered just for a second, but I caught it. I held onto it, because this wasn't weakness anymore. This was release. I looked back at my mother, really looked at her. For the first time, I wasn't seeing the woman I was afraid of. I was seeing someone uncomfortable, cornered. "You didn't just call me a maid tonight," I said quietly. "You've been calling me that in different ways for years, and I believed you." That's the worst part. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. I believed I was worth that little. The room felt heavier now, like the truth had weighed, and it was pressing down on everyone. No one moved. No one interrupted. Even the air felt still. And right in the center of it all, I was no longer invisible. But I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. I could feel something shifting inside me as I stood there, no longer shrinking under their gaze. For years, I had swallowed every insult, every quiet humiliation, convincing myself that staying silent was easier than fighting back. But now, with 22 pairs of eyes locked on me, I realized something terrifying and freeing. They had never expected me to speak. Not once. I wasn't breaking a rule tonight, I was breaking a pattern they had grown comfortable with. My mother let out a tight breath, forcing a small, brittle smile as she looked around the table. "I think Alice is just overwhelmed," she said lightly, trying to pull the moment back under her control. "You know how she gets. Sensitive." A few nervous chuckles followed, weak and uncertain, like people weren't sure if they were allowed to laugh anymore. That word sensitive used to silence me instantly. It made my pain sound like a flaw instead of a response. But tonight, it only made something inside me burn hotter. "No," I said calmly, cutting through the last of those awkward laughs. "I'm not sensitive. I'm aware." The difference hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. My fingers curled slightly at my sides, not from fear this time, but from restraint. I had spent years holding everything in, and now it was all standing at the edge, ready to fall. And if we're finally being honest tonight, I added, my voice steady, then maybe we should stop pretending I'm the only one with a problem. That got their attention. My brother shifted in his chair, finally looking up at me with something close to concern or maybe guilt. Alice, come on, he said quietly, like he was trying to calm a situation that had already gone too far. This isn't the time for this. I almost laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. There was never a right time for the truth in this family, only convenient silence. You're right, I said, nodding slowly, my eyes still locked on him. It's not the time you wanted, but it's the time I needed. His jaw tightened slightly, and he looked away again. That hurt more than my mother's words ever could, because he knew. He had always known, and he still chose comfort over standing beside me. That realization didn't break me this time. It hardened something instead. I turned back to the table, letting my gaze pass over each face, one by one. Do you know why I stayed quiet for so long? I asked softly. No one answered, but I could see it in their expressions. They were listening, really listening now, because I thought if I just worked harder, helped more, stayed out of the way, eventually I earned my place here again. My voice dropped slightly, the truth of it cutting deeper with every word. But you can't earn a place in a family that already decided you don't belong. A heavy silence followed that, thicker than anything before. Mayan looked down at her hands. My cousin avoided my eyes completely now. Even the clinking of cutlery had stopped entirely. It wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was confronting. They weren't watching a scene. They were being pulled into it, forced to face something they had all quietly participated in. And the worst part, I continued, my voice softer now, almost fragile but still standing. You didn't even realize what you were doing. Or maybe you did, and it was just easier to let it happen. I let that linger, not rushing to fill the silence, because sometimes the truth didn't need more words. It needed space to sink in. My mother leaned back in her chair, her expression no longer just annoyed but shaken. She opened her mouth to respond, but for the first time, she didn't have something ready. That alone said more than anything else tonight. The control she had always carried so effortlessly was slipping, piece by piece, and everyone could see it. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of everything I had said and everything I still hadn't, because this wasn't just about being called a Maid. It was bigger than that, deeper, and they were about to understand exactly how deep it went. I let the silence sit just long enough to become uncomfortable, just long enough for every word I'd said to settle into them. My heart was still pounding, but not from fear anymore, from clarity. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. You all think this is about hurt feelings, I said slowly, my voice steady, quieter now. But it's not. It's about something much bigger than that. A few people leaned in slightly, like they could feel the shift coming, even if they didn't understand it yet. My mother straightened again, trying to regain her composure. But there was something different in her eyes now, something uncertain. Alice, whatever you're trying to do, stop, she said, her tone lower, almost warning. This isn't appropriate. That word again, appropriate, as if dignity had a schedule, as if respect could be postponed. I held her gaze, unflinching. No, I replied quietly. What's not appropriate is what you've been doing for years, and what I allowed. I reached into my bag slowly, deliberately, the small movement pulling every eye toward me. You could hear the faint rustle of paper as I pulled out a thin folder. My hands were steady now, completely steady. That alone felt like a victory. You see, while I was in that kitchen, while I was being the maid you all laughed about, I said, placing the folder gently on the table, I was also building something none of you ever bothered to ask about. A few confused glances were exchanged. My brother frowned slightly, like he was trying to piece things together. I didn't move back here, because I failed. I continued, opening the folder and sliding a few documents forward. I moved back because I had to start over. After walking away from something that nearly destroyed me, my voice didn't shake when I said it, but the memory still burned underneath. A company I helped build, a company I co-founded, one that someone I trusted tried to take from me, that got their attention in a way nothing else had. This wasn't just emotion anymore. This was truth they had never imagined. My uncle leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as he glanced at the papers. Alice, he murmured, confusion clear in his voice. What is this? I met his eyes briefly, then looked back at my mother. It's a contract, I said simply, finalized 2 days ago. The room went still again. But this time it wasn't just tension, it was anticipation. Even the air felt heavier, like it was waiting. My mother let out a small, disbelieving laugh, shaking her head slightly. A contract for what? She asked, trying to sound dismissive, but it didn't quite land. Not anymore. Not after everything. I didn't answer immediately. I let the moment stretch, just enough for the weight of it to build. Then I said it, for the acquisition of that company. The words dropped into the room like something solid, heavy, unavoidable. I watched their faces change, not all at once, but piece by piece. Confusion turning into realization. Realization turning into shock. My brother's eyes widened slightly. My cousin leaned forward, her expression completely different now. And my mother, she just stared at me. I didn't fail, I said softly, my voice almost calm now. I lost something, and then I rebuilt it, quietly, without any of you, without your approval, without your belief. I paused, letting that truth land where it needed to. And that contract, I added, my eyes never leaving hers. It's worth more than anything sitting at this table tonight. No one laughed this time. No one moved. Because the story they had believed about me had just shattered completely. The silence that followed wasn't just shock anymore, it was something deeper, heavier, almost suffocating. I could see it in their faces, the way their expressions struggled to catch up with the truth. The version of me they had created, the me, the failure, the invisible one, was collapsing right in front of them, and in its place stood someone they didn't recognize, someone they had never bothered to see. My mother was the first to move. But even that movement felt uncertain. Her fingers curled slightly against the edge of the table, her composure cracking in a way I had never witnessed before. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice quieter now, stripped of its usual sharpness. That question hung between us, almost absurd in its timing. I let out a soft breath, not bitter, just tired. Because you never asked, I replied gently. You decided who I was a long time ago, and you stopped looking after that. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room again. But no one interrupted. No one defended her this time. My brother finally spoke, his voice hesitant, like he was stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Alice, I didn't know, he said, his eyes meeting mine for the first time without avoidance. There was guilt there, real guilt, but it didn't fix anything. I nodded slightly, acknowledging it without letting it undo what had been done. That's the problem, I said quietly. You didn't know, because you didn't try to. I reached forward and closed the folder, the soft sound echoing more than it should have. It felt like sealing something, not just the papers, but a chapter of my life. I didn't come in here tonight to prove anything, I continued, my voice steady, grounded. I didn't need your validation anymore. I already built something without it. I paused, letting my gaze move across the table one last time. But I did need to say this. For me, not for revenge, not for approval, just for truth. My mother's eyes softened slightly. But there was no easy way back from this. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Alice, she started, her voice almost reaching for something it didn't quite deserve yet. But I gently shook my head before she could finish. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. You don't get to rewrite this moment, I said quietly. Not with one conversation, not with one apology. My tone wasn't harsh, it was honest. And somehow, that made it stronger. I stepped back from the table, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I had proven them wrong, but because I had finally stopped needing to. I spent so long trying to earn a place here, I said softly, almost to myself, but loud enough for them to hear. But the truth is, I don't need a seat at a table where I have to shrink to fit. The words didn't shake. They didn't break. They stood. No one stopped me as I turned and walked toward the door. Not my brother, not my cousins, not even my mother. And maybe that was the final answer I had been waiting for all along. Some silences speak louder than apologies ever could. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and real, like a reset. I took a deep breath, my chest rising without that familiar weight pressing down on it. For the first time in years, I felt free, not because I had something to prove, but because I had finally chosen myself. And sometimes, that's the only victory that truly matters.